Hey everybody, welcome back to the RC with Adam podcast. This will be episode 0, I think. And last week it was episode -1, so eventually we're going to get to our first episode here. Man, I'll tell you what, once again, super duper struggle to actually get myself to sit down and press the record button and start recording this podcast episode. And so once again, if you're joining me here, thank you for joining me. And I was going to say, like, thanks for being disciplined and joining me, but I feel like you shouldn't have to be like super disciplined to like listen to a podcast. Hopefully you want to listen to the podcast and enjoy it. But what I mean is, maybe you were going through one of those struggles this week as well. So congratulations to you if you sat down and did something, or stood up and did something, or moved your body through time and space in order to accomplish something. Good job. So this week, we're going to be talking about some different topics. We're going to have a great time. I'm sure we are going to have a great time. And then you'll be able to listen to this podcast while you're mowing the lawn. Or actually, if you live near me, probably not mowing the lawn, because everything is about to be underwater here in North Carolina. In any case, it'll give you something to listen to on the weekend, hopefully. So I got some ideas that we might be talking about today. We might be talking about some burnout. If you are a YouTube creator, especially like me, talking about burnout. Because a lot of people don't talk about that, I feel like. Or maybe you don't think about it until like it's happening. And then going to talk about some other stuff to encourage you to jump into new stuff. We might, I don't know, talk about quadcopters versus airplanes. Start 3D printing. It will change your life. BambuLab and modern 3D printers are amazing. And then I'm doing a collaboration thing with 3D Fuel that I wanted you guys to know about. So anyway, I'm just reading off my notes there. Probably won't ever do that again. But that's what I did. So let's just... So first of all, hey, in case nobody has told you this week that you're doing a good job, you're doing a good job. Thanks for doing a good job. I'm assuming you're doing a good job. I don't know. I don't know you, but if you're like, man, I've been doing a good job and nobody's appreciated that. Well, I'm telling you right now that I appreciate that. Whatever it is that you're doing, good job. Keep on doing it. And that is... that's the thing. Sometimes when you're doing something, sometimes it can be hard to tell, like, all right, is this just a hard job and I should do it, even though nobody, I'm not getting any thanks, and it's hard on me physically and mentally, but it's a job that needs to be done and I should do it. Or maybe that's a sign, if it's that difficult to do something, or if it is putting that much of a stress on you and in your life, maybe that's a sign that you should not be doing that, or do it differently. And so what I'm kind of trying to segue into, excuse me, is talking about burnout, especially for YouTube creators, but I guess it could be anybody. And this podcast, this whole thing is not going to be about burnout. So I'm just going to talk about it kind of for this section because it's been on my mind lately. I've been going through some burnout, getting out of the burnout, and with YouTube stuff and other things as well. And so the big takeaway that I wanted to give you about that, or the little tidbit, is well, first, obviously, you got to take care of yourself. So in case nobody else is telling you this, like, hey, you got to take care of yourself, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. At least that's, I think that was a quote that I heard from somewhere. And gosh, what is that from? I always think about that quote. Oh, is The Princess Bride. Remember in The Princess Bride when the I can't remember, the king guy is talking to his like right-hand man, evil guy, and then he's like, oh, I've got a wedding to plan, a wife to murder. I'm just swamped. And he's like, well, you get some rest. If you haven't got your health, you haven't got anything. And it's a funny scene. Anyway, that's what I always think of. And if I guess if I had an editor editing this, I'd be like, put that scene in there, or they would just do it for me. But and actually, that is something that as a video creator person, that's something that I'm finally looking into and trying to find a video editor to edit my YouTube videos, so that I can be doing more of the creating and less of the editing and sitting behind a desk all the time. And that's part of what I wanted to say about that, is if you are feeling burnt out, you know, that could be that could be a useful thing. It sucks to feel like trash, for sure, and a lot of times you're just like, man, I just don't want to feel bad, because a lot of times with burnout, it's kind of a downward spiral, because it's like, oh wow, it's really raining outside, wowzers. With burnout, it's like you're working so hard, but then you're not seeing results, or things aren't like going how you thought they would be. So then you become discouraged, but then you're like working so hard because you're like, maybe I can turn it around, but then you're discouraged, and then you're trying to get all this energy from a kind of a negative mindset, I guess. And so you don't have the energy, basically, to continue going at the rate that you're going, I guess. Something like that. And so you should listen to that. If you're like, man, I'm feeling, like if you no longer like doing something that you used to like doing, or you just feel this like wall, like they call it a wall of awful, that you just cannot get over, like to bring yourself to work on a task that you need to do. Maybe it's editing a video, or filming something, or talking, or whatever it is. that could definitely be like a sign of burnout. But so listen to what your body is telling you, and use that as an opportunity to kind of like refocus and reevaluate your direction of what you're doing. Because if something like if you're feeling burnt out or stressed out about something, like get to the bottom of that. Like, take some time and actually think, like, okay, what is going on? Like, what am I feeling stressed about? Why do I feel this way? What are the things that are happening? What could I, what would make me not feel this way? And so for me personally, a lot of that has been having to do with the video editing aspect of it. And running small businesses, like that kind of thing. And a lot of times what happens, is if you are a small business owner, or you're like an entrepreneur, solopreneur, a contentpreneur, whatever you want to call it, like basically you're self-employed. A very common thing, and this is what I'm getting to experience now, is where you start out doing, like, you're like, oh, I want to do this thing and make this thing and sell it. But then you realize that you're actually doing everything except for the one thing that you wanted to do in the first place, that got you into it. So that can be very discouraging. But like I said, so it's important to like, yes, you want to just stop feeling like trash. That is important. But a lot of times for me, I feel like that has really helped me to refocus on what it is that I'm doing, and to really to take a second and stop and be like, all right, I'm doing something wrong here. Like, it's not working. Like, whatever's going on, that's making me feel this way, like something's got to change. And so that can be really good. I guess that's what I'm saying. Is that there you can use, when you feel like trash. Maybe you feel like trash right now, and you're like, yeah, I don't see that happening. But it can happen. So usually what you need to do is take a break and step back, however you need to do that, or however long that would take you. And then that'll give you some space to kind of rethink things and reevaluate things, and maybe find other interests, or try new ways of doing things. A lot of times it's like usually the burnout, like by the time it manifests into the physical, it's really it really starts with like the mental side of things, and it really I mean, obviously those two are linked, but I think that's kind of what really needs to happen. Is you really need to sort of like change your mindset, not only take care of your physical health and get sleep and get rest and exercise and stuff like that, which is a lot of times what gets sacrificed when you are building a business or working on a project by yourself. So, all right, I think that's going to do it for that section for today. So burnout sucks, and but you're probably going to get through it, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to take some time too, but listen to what your body and your emotions and your thought you listen to what your feelings are, but don't always do what you feel. You know what I'm saying? So because you can be like, man, I feel like trash and I really don't feel like working on this thing or whatever, but you really should do it anyway. But at the same time, pay attention to like, oh, I'm feeling like this, so why am I feeling like this? And so those could be linked, or it could be like a separate issue, something like that. All right, hope this helps. That was my I don't know, whatever, my free psychiatric or free therapy session, I guess you could say. Anyway, so I guess segueing from that is jumping into something new. That's something that has kind of come up with me lately. I'm trying to think of like if I should get into specifics or not. But basically, hey, jump into something new. Don't be afraid to try new things. It's not too late, all right? And I know that kind of sounds like generic advice, but I feel like there's probably somebody out there who's listening who's like, yeah, that's exactly what I needed to hear. I need to jump into things. And, so you could jump into things like the stuff that I'm into, drones and 3D printing and stuff like that. Don't, or making YouTube videos, making a podcast, right? That's the whole point. I'm here. I am right here, and I do not feel ready. I'm sweating. I thought that this was going to go great, and then I turn on the camera and I'm recording my voice, and I'm like, oh man, this is not going how I thought it would. But that's the whole point, is that it's not going to at first. You just have to jump in and do a new thing, and that's how you start doing new stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I would just say you're not going to feel ready. So don't wait until you feel ready to do something. You should just do it. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, it's easy to say, just do it, blah, blah, blah. But, that is pretty much it. It's like, just start doing the thing, which is hard. It's really hard to do that. And sometimes it's not even as much fun as just doing all the stuff around the thing. That's some good coffee right there. So anyway, okay, so jump into something new. Just that's my encouragement for the day. Don't feel like you're too old or you missed out or blah, 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 whatever. That's a mindset thing. And that's something that's the hardest thing to overcome, is your negative mindset, or you're just you're set in a certain attitude. Okay. So that's really what needs to change there. And I don't know, maybe a good way to kind of begin to overcome that would be to try, like, do your best to think of all the reasons why something could work, or why you should start doing something, or the potential upsides. Because I know it's really easy for me to be like, oh, I'm not going to do that because, well, what if this happens, and then maybe that would happen, or like we come up with this whole narrative in our mind of like how something will go, and a lot of times it's like a negative version of how that will go. And I would say this is kind of a bigger topic, like to that we're not going to get into right now, but I would say that, like, for me, what really helps is like kind of you have to kind of give up your preconceived notions of what is going to happen, and you have to you have to like kind of like let that idea, or let your ideas of something, of how something might go or it might work or might not, you kind of have to let that die, and then and have, I guess, basically kind of like I guess you could say that's like keeping an open mind about something. Yeah, depending on how you look at it, I guess. Also, I'm going to mention right now before I forget, but I want to hear your struggles and successes. I think that would be a great segment to add to the podcast. So if you are watching this, listening to this right now, please leave a comment and let me know what your successes are, or your struggles. Or so you could be struggling with something right now, or maybe you struggled with something and then you had success in that. And mostly I'm looking for stuff in the RC, FPV, drone, 3D printing kind of genre. But if there's something else you'd like to share, go ahead and leave a comment. Or I guess you could email me. Adam at RCwithAdam.com is my email. And, use like RC with Adam podcast in the subject line so that I can like find it. Yeah, so I'll mention that later, maybe, or maybe I'll forget. I don't really know. Anything could happen. Oh boy. All right, so that was kind of a little bit more in-depth, kind of serious stuff, but hopefully that encouraged you. So what I want to talk about is let's just go ahead and touch on quadcopters versus airplanes. So quadcopters versus airplanes. And this is a video that I meant to make previously, but whatever. So I'm just going to spit some stuff out right now. So quadcopters versus airplanes. All right. So you thinking, if you got into one or the other, and you are looking at getting into one or the other, that's dumb. Let me rephrase that. If you are into airplanes and then you're like thinking about getting into drones and stuff, there are certain things, or vice versa. There are certain things that you will be surprised about, or that you'll realize are very different. So, for example, with airplanes, model airplanes, most of the time they don't have a flight controller in there. They don't have like a power distribution board or anything like that. It's really just a battery connected to an ESC, which is an electronic speed controller, and then that gets connected to the motor, and then running off of the ESC is is going to be a cable that goes to your receiver. Okay, and then into the receiver, and this is usually like a bit larger kind of receiver than like a very small quadcopter receiver. That's where you plug all of your servos into. So you can have anywhere from 2 to 4, or I mean you could have more, but generally 2 to 4 servos in your airplane, and then you have your throttle control for the actual motor. And of course, you only have one motor usually. For an airplane, usually it's a single motor airplane, and that's pretty much it. And that is a lot simpler. So airplanes are much more plug and play. There's a lot more like physical stuff going on with airplanes, with physical aerodynamics, in terms of how well your airplane flies. It pretty much is determined by the geometry and the shape and the physical characteristics of the aircraft itself. With quadcopters or drones, or specifically like FPV, high performance drones is what I'm talking about here, that you're building it yourself, or you're just kind of switching over to that. In that case, obviously you're going to have 4 or more usually motors, and then those motors are each going to have an ESC, electronic speed controller, and then those ESCs, they could either be individual, or kind of like an airplane ESC, or they would be just like one big, we call it a board, like a kind of like a microchip board, a PCB board, sort of. So basically, you'd have one board where it's a 4-in-1 ESC, is what it would be called, a 4-in-1 ESC, and then attached to that and stacked right on top would be your flight controller, and your flight controller is the brains of the quad, and that is also what you would connect your receiver into, as well as your video equipment. your FPV stuff, your first person view camera and video transmitter. And so that would all get connected to the flight controller for power, as well as like overlaying information on the screen. So the OSD, the on-screen display, your, let's say like your battery voltage and your throttle and throttle position, and your reception, that would all be excuse me, that would all be going through the flight controller. And then it would get spat out into your video feed, which would then go to your goggles that you could see. So again, we're talking about FPV drones in that instance. So the point there is that you have a lot more complexity with FPV drones, because the way that you kind of like tune them, or the way that you adjust the characteristics of the drone and how well it flies and all that, is going to be through a configurator, either like an app on your phone or an app on your computer. So you're going to connect your quad to your computer or your phone, which that's like unheard of if you're just doing like simple RC airplane stuff. Now, some RC airplanes, they might have a flight controller on board, because maybe they're either like semi-autonomous, or I guess they could be autonomous, but they could, where you could do like GPS, like planned flight routes, or it might have a flight controller on board to allow it to like stabilize, like a gyro stabilization type of setup. But that's not as common, and you definitely don't have to do that with RC airplanes either. With quadcopters, you absolutely need to have the flight controller on board, because that is the brains of the quad, and that is what actually controls all four motors to be able to actually work together and keep the quad in the air, because otherwise they would go out of sync and stuff, because the motor speeds are constantly changing like super duper fast to be able to get the quad to be stable. So quads they're just really incredible in that aspect, but definitely more going on in terms of the electronics. And then of course you have, the pretty obvious things where like you can fly quads in smaller spaces. You can obviously hover them, so they're vertical takeoff, and you don't need to have kind of like a runway or a large open area to fly them. That's nice. Some are so small you can fly indoors. It's much harder to get a airplane that you can fly indoors, and you need a much larger space to begin with. So those are some of the differences that I can think of. I feel like maybe I'm leaving out some super obvious thing that I'm not even thinking of. But if I am, let me know. Because that's something that I do. It has always been important to me, but I especially want to get back to helping beginners and getting helping beginners get into this hobby and this, stuff with 3D printing and things like that, and explaining things in a way that it's easy to understand, and not leaving out details. Because I know that it's super frustrating when you're trying to learn something, and then you have somebody teaching you, and then they leave something out because they're like, oh, well, that's obvious. And you're like, well, actually it's not obvious, because I've never done this before. So if I have left something out, let me know. Leave me a comment or something like that. And that brings us to the next subject, which is, if you're not 3D printing yet, you should probably start. Or if you have thought about 3D printing and you're like, yeah, that's pretty cool, maybe I'll get into it, I don't know, but I always wanted to, but like I'm not. No, you should just do it. Just do it. Because 3D printers now are amazing. Okay, I have a BambuLab carbon X1 carbon, and they sent it to me, by the way. So thank you, BambuLab. That was just super nice of them, because I really haven't made any content like about it, and that's what they said. They were like, we just want more people to like test it out and stuff. And it's a game changer, because it's like auto bed leveling, especially with the AMS system, the multi-filament system. So you can have 4 rolls and then just pick one during the printing process, or you can print multicolor items. That's crazy. one of my favorite things about all of this stuff though is like the auto bed leveling, because it'll do auto bed leveling calibration, like I think the flow calibration, like it does a lot of stuff. And so I don't have to like fiddle with it and tool around with it and tweak things. So, and most of the time it's going to be just fine. Like every time, like 9 out of 10 times or more, probably more, when I hit print, it's going to print it. I did just run into a situation where it was not, I had bed adhesion issues. Because I was printing these airplane wings, and so they're they're very thin with just one layer line, and so I was having bed adhesion issues. And it turns out, I think the main problem really was just the bed was really dirty. I hadn't cleaned it in like a few months, and so it was all built up with dust and the goo, magic goo, actually, the magic goo stuff that I put on the bed to help with bed adhesion. So the point is if you do like the bare minimum maintenance and stuff, it's probably going to work just fine. And 3D printing is so cool because you can just take an idea from your brain and then put it in like a little designing program and then spit that out and then spit it into your slicer and then be like boop 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 print, and then it just prints. It just prints in the machine. It's crazy. I mean, it is a little more complicated than that, and you can definitely get more complicated and get more into it than that. But for the most part, like that's what it is, and it's super super cool for somebody like me who has a bunch of ideas, and well, so 3D printing itself is fantastic. I guess really it wouldn't be nearly as cool for me anyway if I couldn't like design it. So even just like a super simple designer like Tinkercad is a great place to start. It's free software online, tinkercad.com, and then you can use like basic shapes and combine them and stuff to create what you would need to print. But then there's also like you can just also find other people's models, STL files, 3D models of thousands and thousands and bagillion million things to print, and which is super cool. So even if you weren't going to design something yourself, you could just use something else that somebody has. And what's also really cool, I really like this about the BambuLab, and maybe other manufacturers are doing it, I don't know, because I'm pretty much using BambuLab exclusively. But they have on their website, makerworld.com, you can download the models, but you can also like open it right into the slicer software, or in this case, BambuLab Studio, and you can I think you select like which printer you have and stuff, and you can just print it like right away, and you use like the presets that have been made by other users. So not all the models you can do that with, but some of them, or if somebody's made like a print profile or a preset for that, then you can just do that right away, which is super cool. But for me, I don't really like doing that because I like to tweak things how I like them, and all that. But everybody's a little bit different. Not everybody is as much of a nerd about these things as I am, and I don't know, I'm not even that much of a nerd. I think everybody has like their own little thing that they like to nerd out about, in terms of like certain aspects of it and stuff. Because like I'm not really like a G code nerd. I don't get into the G code, like the actual code of the 3D printer and all this stuff. I just kind of use like whatever the latest software is, and I'm like, all right, cool. But in terms of like let's say more of how it affects like physically, like in terms of like what kind of infill to use, how much infill, wall thickness, things like that, I find very fascinating, because that has to do with like the engineering, kind of the structural integrity of the print as well. And that's usually what I'm most concerned about. I think it's really cool that there are these like aesthetically pleasing, more kind of artistic, like interesting, stylish prints. And I do like printing some of those. But most of what I do is just from a mechanical kind of perspective. Like I like to print things that are mechanically useful, kind of more practical prints. And segue, 3D Fuel filament is really good for that. They make some really durable PLA, and then they're also making that what is it, the PCTG, so not PETG, not PCP, not PPCCTT, but PCTG. That's right. Can't remember what that stands for. It's some chemistry nerd words, but what that is, that's supposed to be even like more durable than PETG. And by the way, all of these letters and stuff that I'm saying, these are filaments, and the filament is, in case you don't know, the filament is the plastic that you use to 3D print stuff. Okay, and it looks like spaghetti, comes on a big spool. And it comes in different types of materials. So the most common is PLA, which that stands for polylactic acid. And then there's other variations of that, and then other types of filament entirely. And so the other popular one is PETG, and or PETG, some people call it. My understanding about kind of the differences between those is that PLA is more rigid, so it is sort of stronger-ish in the sense that it has less flexing, right? So if you need a rigid part, PLA may be better for that. However, it is not as what would you say? Like it's not as malleable. So like let's say if you drop it, it's more likely to shatter than PETG, because PETG, while it may not be as rigid as PLA, it is kind of more durable in like impact resistance, is what I understand. However, 3D Fuel PLA, they're tough PLA, tough pro, gosh, it has kind of a weird name. Tough Pro PLA Plus. That is some really good stuff, and that's what I like to print with most, because for me it is as good as PETG. And I never really liked printing with PETG because you had to print like at higher temperatures, and that was with my old printers as well, to be honest. So it probably would be a different experience with the BambuLab printers, but it was always like a little bit more finicky than PLA. And then again, and I think it was more expensive. I'm not sure. But anyway, I never really got on the PETG bandwagon. But I am interested in this PCTG bandwagon because it is supposed to be more, what is it? It's like PETG on steroids is what I understand. So I haven't actually tested it out personally. I need to do that, and I will be doing that some more. But anyway, 3D Fuel, they're really great for I like their PLA is very, very strong. So that's what I usually like to print with. Second segue, 3D Fuel. We'll have to see how this kind of pans out, but I just was talking with them, and I am now like a collaborator person. So I have a link that you can use to get 10% off. And then I get a little commission as well on the purchases. So if you need some 3D Fuel filament, use my link. I will have it in the description of this video, perhaps, I think. I don't know. I haven't actually used it yet, so we'll see how that goes. But keep that in mind if you do need some really good, super strong PLA or PCTG. Check out 3D Fuel in the description down below. All right, that was not sponsored. That's just me saying stuff. All right, is there anything else we want to talk about today? We've made it to 35 minutes, which I think is a little bit more than last time. And it's funny because I thought it would be, I was like, oh, it would be super easy to have like an hour-long podcast of just me talking. But it turns out that I am human and talking for an hour can kind of wear me out sometimes. So, so sometimes there's just going to be like silence, like while I drink my coffee, just silence. And you might be thinking, oh, you got to cut out those silent parts because people are going to click away. They're going to click away. That's the big fear. They're going to run away. They're going to find somebody else to watch. Well, guess what? That's not the case. Actually, those silent parts are for your benefit. You're welcome because then you can stop and reflect and you don't have to listen to me going meow, 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 the whole time. Because sometimes you need some quiet time to be able to stop and think, and process things. That's how I am. I need time to process things. And that's not a bad thing. You want to be able to think. I really hope people, like, I hope I help people think with this, I don't know, this podcast and with everything that I do. That's why my slogan, one of my slogans, it's a new one actually, I'm still trying it out, but it's think, create, fly. Because you can't create without thinking. And you got to create if you want to fly. So really, you got to think if you want to fly. But I'm pretty sure there's a YouTube channel called Think Flight. So that name is already taken. So I can't just say think fly. Think fly. I mean, that's pretty good actually. Think fly. Yeah, especially if we're talking like using it in the slang in terms of fly to mean very cool. So that would be cool too. Because guess what? Thinking is cool. It really is very cool. And that is what I hope to leave you with, is to just to get you thinking. Yeah, I would say so. And I'll be honest with you right now. I'm kind of feeling like, man, come on. I'm like, you're wasting people's time, I hear that voice. And it's like, oh yeah, just you're gonna have to go back and edit this out, or you're gonna have to, or whatever, like, because you're just saying stuff, man. Like, and people got places to be and things to do and stuff. But look, you can stop listening to this podcast at any time. Part of the point of doing this podcast, like I said before, is one, I can't remember what the number one reason was. So number two was to probably just to do it, because it had been on my mind to just try it out and get ideas in my head out and just kind of talk through them, because that's what I do. That's what I do when I'm thinking through a problem. I just kind of talk through it, and I thought, well, shoot, maybe other people would like to hear that, or it would help other people. And that is the third reason for doing the podcast, which is to hopefully help people, or just be, I don't know, just be like this oh man, I was trying to think of some good thing there and I couldn't think of it, and then it took too long. So anyway, we're going to restart that. So to just be like, your friend. And I know I can't really be your friend because we're, like I'm on a screen, or I'm in your earbuds or whatever. But, hopefully to be as much of a friend for that person out there who needs a friend, who needs somebody who is, interested in the same stuff that they're interested in. Because I know it's crazy, right? Because with the internet and stuff, you would think, well, who could be lonely, right? Who could not have a friend? How could you not find somebody who's interested in the same stuff you are? But so I mean, it can happen. It can certainly happen. Or if you have the mindset of, oh, or whatever. I don't like people, or I don't want to make friends, or whatever. Like, not because you're in an unfriendly way, but maybe you just maybe you've had bad experiences with making friends with people or something like that. But anyway, so I hope that um that this would be a great podcast for somebody who just wants somebody to hang out with. I guess that's what I'm saying, basically. And we're just hanging out. And like I said, maybe you're trapped in your car. Maybe you're driving across the country. Maybe you're flying across the country. And maybe I don't know, you're doing your normal workday thing. Maybe you drive a garbage truck and you're driving, and then you're driving down the street, and then a dog runs into the road, and you're like, oh no, there's a dog in the road, and the dog is getting chased by a zebra, and you're like, well, what the heck is happening here? Is a circus in town? And then you're like, what? And then you go down the road, and then the zebra is no, I don't know. I was so close to coming up with a good story there, but anyway, that's the point. Is I don't know what the point. I don't know how to get myself out of that. I was trying to do one of those, one of those crazy stories that like turns into something, like somehow it relates, and I couldn't do it. Okay. Well, next time though. Next time. And also, the other reason for doing this is just a consistency thing for me. It's kind of a consistency discipline thing of like saying, hey, I'm going to do this thing, a podcast, and actually just sit down and do it and talk about stuff. And I think that's probably true with a lot of things in life. So whatever you're dealing with, what would probably help is if you like to just have something that you do consistently, even if it turns out bad or not. And you're just like, hey, I'm going to show up. And whatever happens, happens. And so I guess that's ultimately what I'm doing right now, is I'm just kind of here showing up, because maybe there's somebody who needs somebody to show up. Yeah. I wish I could just ask you questions. You probably have something interesting that you're doing, or thinking about, because that would be more interesting to be able to interact. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll have some guests on the show, or the podcast, in the future. That would be cool. I'll tell you something funny that I was saying to my wife the other day about, I just did my first podcast. One of the benefits of having a podcast is that way when, you're talking to somebody and you can say, oh yeah, I talked about that last week on my podcast. But what that really means is last week when I was talking to myself, that was one of the things I mentioned to myself. But if you record it and you put it up as a podcast, then you get to say, oh yeah, last week on my podcast. Oh yeah, we talked about this on my podcast. And, I guess it's kind of the same with a YouTube channel a little bit, but that's funny. But yeah, it definitely doesn't sound as cool if you're like, oh yeah, I was talking to myself about that yesterday. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, whatever, man. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Also, so that, I guess that was your joke for the day. There you go. Something else I've been thinking about. Oh, hey, you know what? Just a little, maybe I should save this for next time. I don't know. Maybe I'll just say it again next time. But hey, if what I've found for me is sometimes if I'm like feeling like trash, or I'm just feeling like I can't focus on stuff, or I'm feeling stuck in a project or whatever, start cleaning stuff. Like, I know that sounds like something that wouldn't help. It sounds like more work, right? Because you're like, oh man, I got to do this, I got to do that, and like I don't have time to clean my desk, and I don't have time to clean my room, But do it, because you will feel so much better, and you will feel like you've gotten something done, and you have gotten something done, and that's a big That's a big step in the right direction right there. And like 9 times out of 10, it will snowball. And yeah, sometimes that means like you spend like 2 hours cleaning stuff instead of like actually doing, the thing that you were putting off. But you were probably going to put it off for 2 hours anyway. So you may as well get something out of it. And, clean stuff, organize stuff. That always helps me a lot. And I'm looking at stuff right now. My new office space, it needs to get cleaned up. There's been a lot of things that have just been kind of piling up and sitting around, projects and stuff. And hey, look, I'll tell you what, if you have a project, you better get that project done, because if you're anything like me, it will eat you alive. Okay, it's like a leech. It's like a leech. But it's like a leech that you created or something. Or it's like a leech that you're like, hey, I'm going to put this leech on me and that'll be fun. And then, you know, 10 months later, you're like, oh man, this leech is still on me and it's sucking my blood. And it's like, well, yeah, it's sucking your blood because you put it on there. It's a leech. Anyway, I don't think that's a great analogy, but the point is that I have found that starting projects and then not actually finishing them, or not finishing or doing projects and things that don't have like a clear like kind of end date or like a goal, that's not good. It's not good. That's not good. Like, at least do something with them. Like figure it out in your head or write it down or whatever, that like where it's like, okay, this project is, like this project is on hold. Okay? So you don't necessarily have to like put the project away or stop doing it or whatever, but you need to like mentally be like, okay, this project, super great project, love it, glad that I started it, but it is no longer priority number one, and it is like going to go into hibernation mode or something. So it's like, and that could mean different things. It could mean that you put it away or something, or get it out of sight or whatever. Or maybe better would be to just say, make a decision. All right, am I going to finish this project, or am I going to decide that it's not worth finishing, or I'm not going to? And don't be afraid of going, oh, well, mama didn't raise a quitter. I'm not a quitter. I got to do every single thing that I start doing. Like, no, you don't. Like, that does sound nice. And if that's you and you do that, like works for you, then that's great. But for me, for a lot of people, it's way better to just admit and go, okay, I started this project. I wanted to at the time. I no longer want to do this project. So I'm going to cut my losses and put the things away and just done. I'm going to call it done. There you go. Or the other option would be, okay, this is a good project. I just need to buckle down and finish it. So I'm going to give myself a week to do it. Or like on this date, this is when this project is going to go away. Whether it's done or not. So then you have like until that time to either finish it or not finish it, either way. But after that point, you no longer have to think about the project. You will no longer have this running project that is on your list of to-dos that like, keeps recurring, where you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I got to do that thing. Oh yeah, I got to get around to do that. Well, blah, blah, blah. Because if you put something off for that long, like it's probably not worth it. But hey, I'm going to go full circle and tie this back into the first part, which is that you got to listen to yourself and listen to your inner being. Listen to, how, like, your body, how, like, what is your body doing? How do you feel? How do certain things make you feel? So if you're working on a project and you're like, oh man, every time I think about this project, I feel like trash, or I can't bring myself to do it, or or it spirals. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that project, but first I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and then I can't do that until I do that, and then you get overwhelmed. Like, something's wrong. Something could be improved there, and you're not doing. You're not I don't know. I'm not sure what you're doing, but that's for you to figure out. But something's wrong. It could be done better. And so again, kind of like with the burnout, you got to think to yourself, okay, well, like what is it about this project? Why is this project taking so long? And kind of, detach yourself as much as you can from the project. Don't look at it like, well, I should have done this. I should have gotten this done, before, or I, I, oh, it's just another one of those projects that I started and I didn't finish or whatever. Like, no, like, um, just, uh, uh, take that feeling, or that negative feeling that you get from when you think about having to do this project, and actually kind of analyze it, and think about it and be like, okay, well, what is it? Oh, well, it's because this project is, when I think about doing this project, I really need to get this other one done first, and that one is taking a long time, so now I can't do this project. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you need to like reorder your priorities, or maybe you need to, like I said, like figure out, basically reevaluate. So instead of thinking, oh yeah, I've had this project out here for 3 months or whatever, look at it like you just started the project, and you like take away all the past stuff. Like, don't worry about that. Like, don't worry that it's been sitting there for a super long time, and you said that you were going to do it in 3 days, but it's actually 3 months later and it still isn't done. Like, just look at it from where it is right now. Like, do you want to finish it? And what does that even mean, to finish something? Like, what is it? What do you actually want to do with the project or the thing? Like, I'm right now, I am looking at a stack. Oh gosh, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm looking at a stack of five foam board trays that I made, which is actually a pretty smart thing that you can do. You can just take a piece of Dollar Tree foam board, and then you cut it, and then you hot glue like edges on there, and then that way you have like this nice big tray, and you can put projects on there. Okay, but the problem is that I have a bunch of them, and they're filled with projects. So I'm looking at one right now, and it's got a drone frame. That's actually that Speedy Bee frame that I never actually built a drone on. Said I was going to, but I didn't actually do it. Because it's way more fun to say things than to actually do the things. There's another one. I think it has another old quadcopter with some of the parts are good, some are bad. It's like partially taken apart. I think that was the one I was doing my waterproof testing with in the first place. The next tray has, what is that? I think it has more waterproofing parts. Some like waterproofing silicone stuff. It's got, and then it has my little mini. It's actually like the Flywoo Cinerace drone, but that's in parts as well, because I had been telling myself, oh, I'm going to build. What was I gonna do with that? I'm gonna like put it on a new frame. I think I said I was gonna put it on a new frame, and then it was gonna become like my micro freestyle drone. But that obviously like not high priority. And then what else do I have? Oh, I think I can't see what's in the other one. And then at the very top, I have my waterproof drone project, and that is something that I have. So a good thing that I did do is I put on my calendar to have a date when that is going to be like ready, basically. So it's like, hey, on this date, I am going to, which I think is like next week actually, I am going to go out and fly out like and over water and stuff, right? So I need this waterproof floating drone ready to go, and kind of imagining, or not imagining, but putting the scenario on of like, okay, this needs to be ready to go by that time. And maybe even think of it not even for yourself, but for somebody else. If because a lot of times we do things for other people that we would not do for ourselves. So if you imagine, your friend says, hey, oh, I need, can you get me, can you build one of these, a waterproof floating drone for me by next week? I'd probably be like, heck yeah, man, I'm going to make it priority number one because I'm an awesome friend. But then for myself, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe or not, or ever. Maybe I'll get to it. Probably never. right? And I'm like, okay, Adam, there you go. There you go. Enjoy that, buddy. Oh man. So I think you can probably understand what I'm saying there. Um, so so come up with a way of like of holding yourself accountable, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. And then I would say a big thing with projects and stuff like so even if so again we meaning people like me, a lot of times like creative types, more right brain people, or is it left? I think it's right. The more creative type of people, we often see things as like an all or nothing situation. Or I don't know, or whoever I don't care how whatever you identify as or how your brain is or whatever. But if you are also somebody who tends to see things as like all or nothing, I think it's also really important to remember that like even if you have a project that has been sitting around for a long time, don't make it harder for yourself to actually do something with it by having this like all or nothing mentality. So what I mean is I'm looking at this tray with these drone parts right now, and I'm thinking, to myself, since I've been talking about this to you guys, I've been thinking about this like, okay, I got to do something with it. Like, what am I going to do with it? So here's the thing. The most important thing right now, because obviously that is not high priority, I don't need to make it high priority and like be like, oh, I gotta put off what I'm gonna do today and get that done right now. No, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think the best way to do it is to be like, okay, well, let's get this out of the way, because right now it's in the way. It's sitting on top of like another container, and so I can't get to it. In fact, it was on top of my battery charging case, and so I wasn't charging batteries, and so it was just in the way. So the main thing, what I'm saying is, take those projects that are obviously low priority and make them get out of the way. Get them out of the way. Make them so that they are not in the way of the high priority projects that you are doing, because then that way they're really not a problem. Now mentally they may still be cluttering up your old brain noggin, but physically at least they are out of the way. And so basically what I'm thinking that I'll do is and I'm glad that we are talking about this, because now I feel motivated to go like tackle this pile of stuff, and it's going to feel so friggin' good once I do. So keep that in mind. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind of like, ooh, once I like do this thing that's been sitting around, once I get something out of the way, or just clean something up, whatever it is, you're going to feel so much better, and you're probably going to feel like doing those bigger tasks that you felt like you didn't have the energy for. So it's really cool because you can actually create your own energy and momentum from that. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is, get my eyes on it, get my hands on it, and look at it again, right? Because you gotta look at the monster if you're going to do something about the monster, and then it won't be such a scary monster. You got to look at it, and then I'm going to figure out like where else I can put these parts. So I guess kind of figure out what to do with them, and then be like, all right, well, these are in the way and they're taking up a project tray. So I will, let's say for example, just put them in a container, or maybe just put them in a Ziploc bag. Yeah, whatever, something like that. And then put them in a drawer or some spot like where they're supposed to go. So like, where would I think to look for this when I need it later? Put it there. And then, and this is of course assuming that it's worth keeping the thing and I shouldn't just get rid of it, which that might be an option as well. And then what I'll do is, we froze up here. Camera may have overheated. That is entirely possible. So in any case, I think we lost video, but that's okay. This is important though. We're not going to let that stop us. So basically, I'm going to take the thing, I'm going to minimize the space that it's taking up and get it out of the way of my important projects and my life. And then what I'm going to do is, on my calendar, I'm going to write down a day in the future that I am going to look at that project, or I'm going to revisit that project. So And the reason why that is helpful is because for people like me also, I tend to want to just get on it right now. Like I'll just throw whatever I'm doing out the window and just jump onto this new thing because I freaking love novelty and I love new projects and switching things up, and it's great. But that is not the best thing to do because you got to stay on your priorities that you're on right now. So we're gonna put it away. We're gonna basically put it on paper, like where it is and what we're gonna do with it. So that way, because we don't need it to be sitting out all the time for us to remember to do something. Put it on your schedule. Speaking of schedules, if in case you're interested or in case you need a schedule or something, I really love TickTick. This app called TickTick, TickTick, and it has a calendar and it's like a to-do list. It's been super duper helpful for me because I've been really struggling with calendars and getting things done and lists and all that stuff for like pretty much my whole life. And that has really helped me a lot. So TickTick, not TikTok. It's TickTick. TikTok is like the opposite, and that will like destroy you. TickTick is a great calendar and planner and stuff like that. So that's what I would do. I think that's what I'm going to do. And so I've said it, so I better do it. And that's another really important thing is don't start projects or don't say you're going to do projects and stuff when you're not actually going to do them. So I'm going to have to do that now. And it's going to feel amazing though. Once I get that done, it's going to feel so great. Because I think that's also part of like, you get this awful feeling, when you have projects that you haven't kept up with and you haven't, you just, I don't know, you've been putting off or something, or I think it's this like almost like this cognitive dissonance thing where you say that something is important, but then it's not, or you say, oh yeah, that's a cool project, I'm gonna do that, and then you don't. And man, that just brings to mind all of my that brings to mind a lot of projects actually. And that can be a bummer sometimes. That can be a downer. And you're probably thinking of some things as well. Like, so I'll give you an example. Like there's a bunch of projects that I thought were important. And then like, I haven't done them. I haven't revisited them and all that stuff. And, some of that is because I haven't actually put them on my calendar and my schedule to do that. So I'm getting better at that. I'm still working on that. But maybe you bought stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that. Or I bought I don't know, airplane parts, whatever, kits, drones, cameras, whatever. And then they just sit around for months. And then you're like, oh dang, I guess I, didn't need that or whatever. Or you just kind of always feel like you never have time for it. And so that can be a bummer, but I want you to not get bummed out about that because I am not going to get bummed out about that right now, even though I kind of want to. But you got to stay strong and remember to treat yourself good and not get in that downward spiral, and basically make a plan like for doing all those projects or put it on your calendar or my big thing, again, circling back to kind of what we were talking about, is just like jump into it. Just start it somewhere. Put on your calendar that you're going to take whatever, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, probably not more than an hour, because then you're probably just going to find an excuse to not do that because that takes too much time. Whatever, 5 minutes or something. You're going to open a box. You're going to read a manual for something that you need to put together. Okay? You're just going to, look in this drawer that you need to organize. You're just going to figure out what to do. You don't even have to do it. You don't even have to figure out what to do. You're gonna figure out like one thing that you could do to work towards finishing a project or something like that. Anyway, all right. Looks like we're about over an hour in, and yeah. So I think I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna do my projects. I'm gonna get this video out here, get this get this podcast out here. I think we lost video through like part of it, so that's okay. And I'm going to go work on that thing that I was just talking about. And I'm super pumped about that. So I hope you are too. I hope you have a fantastic day and have had a fantastic week. And we'll have a fantastic weekend as well. And I don't know. Leave a comment. Let me know. Talk to me. Hopefully this helped you. If it did, let me know. Let me know your success, your struggles and successes, especially your struggles and successes, because success without a struggle, that we think that that's what we all want, but really that's a terrible story, to be like, hey, I made a plan to do something really hard. And then it was actually very easy because the plan went exactly as I planned. And it's like, okay, great, Bob. What a great story that you had. Nobody cares about your, the thing that went perfectly well, although that can be something that we can, learn from and stuff. But a way better story is when you're like, oh man, I was out there and I, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then, this thing happened, or I thought I had it all planned out. And then, a tornado hit my house. And then, I didn't know how I was going to organize my card collection or something. I don't know. That's a terrible example. Okay. All right. Oh boy. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And I'll be back. I'll be back next Friday or next time with another episode. So stay strong, hang in there, build something, fly something. Remember to think, create, and fly. And I will see you again very soon.